Salutations, Imperial citizens and battle brothers. After taking something well established for a spin the last time, today we are going off the beaten path. The next detachment has so little data, it is not even possible to say what the meta is. What detachment, you ask? Well, it's the Librarius Conclave. I mean, you know that, unless you clicked on this video by accident. The Librarius Conclave is built all around the Librarians, Space Marine Psykers. Every unit in your army led by a Psyker, including Inquisitors, will benefit from psychic disciplines. These disciplines are split into 5 different effects. Biomancy for plus 2 inches of movement, Divination to reroll once to hit and wound, Pyromancy to improve your AP against nearby targets in shooting, Telekinesis to weaken incoming ranged attacks, and Telepathy to ignore every kind of hit roll modifier imaginable. Out of these, I think Divination and Biomancy are the strongest, but each one has its uses. You choose which of the discipline effects applies at the start of each battle round. That means you have to call your shot in advance if you are the second player, and always before you draw your secondary cards. To make this whole thing even more complex, the enhancements and stratagems in this detachment each have a bonus if you are currently applying the correct discipline. Starting off strong with Prescience. This grants its user a reactive move and fixes the distance from d6 to flat 6 if Divination is active. A really good enhancement, albeit a bit expensive, and it sadly cannot go on Terminators. Celerity gives its bearer and its unit advance and charge, with a bonus to fallback and charge if Biomancy is active. Just baseline on its own, this enhancement is really good. You could either decide to sprint 10 Terminators in a brick forwards, or give a smaller kill squad like Assault Intercessors a jumping off point. Not as apparent is Obfuscation. The equipped unit is immune to the Fire Overwatch stratagem, and while in Telepathy, also becomes unshootable outside of 18 inches, otherwise known as 18-inch low-knob. Rather than on an offensive unit, I actually like this enhancement on a shooting unit, allowing it to shoot without getting shot back. This one is situational, but I appreciate the toolbox. To finish off as strong as we started, we have Fusillade. The Psyker and its unit gain the anti-vehicle and anti-monster 5+ rule, which combos not only with the Librarian's inherent devastating wounds gun, it also works really well with Thunder Hammers, Sternguard Bolt Rifles, all for the same reason. In addition to that, you can either activate sustained hits 1 by going into Pyromancy, or add 6 inches to your range in Telekinesis. Look, it's Armor of Contempt. Just like the last 4 times we talked about stratagems, it's good. Now, imagine being able to throw a grenade into combat. A combat 18 inches away from the model throwing the grenade, which is also in combat. That's a sail. What an amazing little stratagem. This is your equivalent to Thousand Sun's Doombolt, so consider using this as often as possible. It works really well with low knobs, since they cannot be targeted outside of 12, and it can target low knobs. Your bonus comes from Telekinesis. Should Telekinesis be active for whatever reason, your grenade roll works on 3-up instead of 4-up. Fiery Shield is an infantry lock defensive buffs against melee attacks. It gives a unit within range of a Psyker, note, not necessarily a Psyker itself, -1 to be hit in melee, and, should Pyromancy be active, turns enemy melee weapons hazardous. Don't get too hung up on the hazardous part, but should you encounter annoyingly tough models like Custodian Wardens or hordes of enemies like Orc Boys, remember this line of text. Iron Arm is very simple. Pick an infantry unit with an 18 of a Psyker and it gets +1 strength during the fight phase. While not as good as something like +1 attack or +1 to wound, this gets you over a lot of significant hurdles. Your strength 5 melee weapons wound T3 on 2s, it wounds toughness 10 on 5s instead of 6s, it hits toughness 6 more efficiently, and so on. Your bonus applies in Biomancy, when your +1 turns into a +2 strength. That is genuinely pretty good, because now your strength 5 weapons can hit into toughness 12, for example. Good stratagem. In order to boost your range damage, you get access to Prescient Precision. It gives any Psyker unit the Ignores Cover rule, which is usually the same thing as +1 AP very often. In addition, while Divination is active, it also gives your unit lethal hits. This is genuinely really good on a high volume unit, and I like that rerolling the hit roll of 1 synergizes with the lethal hits. And towards the end, we have Sensory Assault. For the low price of 1 command point, you can reduce the movement and charge distance of an enemy unit within 18 inches by 2 inches. This is situationally useful, but I haven't used it once in all honesty. The bonus is rather lackluster too, causing the targeted unit a battle shock while telepathy is active. If you think this is complicated, you would be correct. I recommend you create some tip cards for yourself, writing down each discipline and what bonus you get while it is active. How do we build a Librarius list? First, I have decided to include Chief Librarian Tigorius. Tigorius has a really strong psychic gun and makes this unit really annoying to attack, thanks to a permanent -1 to hit being applied and a 4-up Feel No Pain against all mortal wounds. In addition, you are allowed to use your 4 specific stratagems for free once per round. Heroic Intervention, Counter-Offensive, Go to Ground, and Overwatch. Because these strats are named explicitly, you are allowed to double up on them. Tigorius attaches to a squad of 6 Blade Guard veterans. These guys, usually very underwhelming due to their lackluster offense, really shine in this detachment. With +1 strength, they can finally attack harder targets, and with reroll 1s to hit and wound, you can safely pick their own ability to reroll invulnerable saves of 1 in combat all the time. Once you scalpel out the heavy damage units from your opponent's list, this squad is very irritating to deal with. Be prepared to spend more time with the character slot, because next is a Phobos Librarian. The Phobos Librarian turns his attached unit unshootable outside of 12 inches, which means you can safely use Assail and Sensory Assault without exposing yourself. I attached him to a unit of 5 Infiltrators, which prevent any reserves from arriving within 12 inches. This combination makes your unit basically immune against Deep Strike, since units can't arrive within the distance required to shoot or charge you. The list features 2 regular Librarians. They grant a 4-up invulnerable save and carry my enhancements. 1 Librarian joins a squad of Sternguard veterans with the Fusillade enhancement. With the full rerolls to wound from Oath, this unit can kill a Land Raider from 16 to 0 without being in rapid fire range. The unit rides in a Repulsor tank, a heavy transport with the innate rule to allow any unit within 5 inches to embark immediately if they get charged. This is very important to keep my Sternguard safe after they killed their first target. My second Librarian joins a unit of Desolation Marines and has Obfuscation. With the option to activate 18-inch Lone Op, my Desolators will never lose an indirect firefight against Mortars, Plague Burst Crawlers, or Dark Reapers. I have decided to run this rather expensive indirect piece because the terrain in the store features a massive ruin with a 2nd floor. This puts me far enough up to benefit from the plunging fire rule, giving me a bonus to my AP. To get some meat onto the table, we have a double feature of Librarians in Terminator armor. They give their units sustained hits, and I decided to give one of them advance and charge, while the other one starts the game in reserve with a teleport homer. Each character joins a 5 model unit of Assault Terminators. 3 hammers and 2 claws. This split is done on purpose to be as annoying as possible for wound allocation. The 3 wound claws can take damage 2 attacks, while the 4 wound shields can soak up damage 3. The claws also help a ton to avoid getting stuck in a prolonged combat with 10 cultists or similar characters. With every Psyker out of the way, we get the usual Intercessor squad to sticky their home objective and raise a few banners. Our list features some fire support. 1 Ballistus Dreadnought for the long range lasers, functioning without Oath of Moment, and a Fire Strike servo turret, which starts every game in reserve to deliver the last fusel shots exactly where I need them. This might seem a bit random, but the repulsor, ballistas, and turret combined shoot a fair number of laser shots, which is usually enough to handle most vehicles. The final result is a very elite looking force with a total of 10 units. Half of our army comes with a devastating wound shooting attack and a 4-up feel no pain against psychic attacks, which means should we ever run into Grey Knights or Thousand Suns, it's probably game over. The return of the Solar Spearhead. After beating this list with my Stormlance the day before, I was familiar with all their tricks. I used my repulsor early to snipe a Caladius tank and made sure to threaten the side objective with some Terminators while holding the 2 closest to me for dear life. Assail is very important here, because it allows us to chip a bit of damage into the Dreadnoughts to turn off their OC bonus. You do give them rerolls to hit, but I don't really mind because the Solar Spearhead doesn't do much damage outside of the Caladius tanks. With Armor of Contempt and Fiery Shield, our Terminators do a great job defending against the 2 Warden bricks, and we walk away with an Ultramarines victory. Here they are, the dreaded Eldar. In round 2, I can see the Eldar list we have been expecting to see after preview season. 3 Phoenix Lords, all attached to their Aspect Warriors, and a bunch of additional Aspect Warrior units, rounded out into 3 transports. But this is exactly what we came to fight. The Terminators are very resilient against the Dark Reaper guns, Tigurius can protect his Blade Guard against Azurman's devastating wounds, and our Desolation Marines have free reign to pick up any Aspect Warrior we want from behind a wall. On turn 1, I basically decide to trade my entire Stern Guard for a Wave Serpent. Said Serpent was holding the big Dark Reaper squad, which I promptly shelled and heavily damaged with the Desolation Marines. The Eldar have trouble holding primary, and while the Spiders manage to contest me rather well throughout the game, once a Terminator squad can walk onto a marker without much fear, it will wipe away the Elves without issue. With a close score, the Ultramarines achieve another victory. Round 3. Do I have to say anything at this point? This is the 3rd time I've fought against this detachment this weekend, and if I see Solar Spearhead one more time, I promise I will lose my mind. My opponent, frustrated by one of the earlier games this day, decided to get aggressive. A Telemon pushes up, advances 17 inches, and kills the 5 infiltrators attached to my Phobos Librarian on turn 1, while the entire rest of the Dreadnoughts move onto every objective. I analyze the situation and decide to ignore the objective on the right and focus on dealing with one thing at a time while pushing for secondaries. I redraw my cards, kill the Telemon in front of my army without exposing the Stern Guard to shooting, and use my Desolation Marines to kill the 4 sisters holding the enemy home objective. I hand my opponent a 5 on primary and force him to make a choice. Use the Caladius to move back to the home objective and screen the backline, or push up and kill my repulsor. My opponent decided to go for damage and moves the 5-up Feel No Pain Telemon onto the front of the objective. I rapid ingress my Terminators and make a move towards said objective with the intention to burn it. I kill the Telemon with my Stern Guard, work my way through the Contemptors, and successfully push the score lead all the way to the end. The day ends in yet another Ultramarines victory. I walk away with my 2nd undefeated record of the weekend and carry home another trophy and some store credit. My final placing is 2nd place overall, and I am very happy with the list. The Librarius Conclave is a hard army to build, because I went into this event without Guilliman or Kelgar. I relied entirely on the buffs provided by the Psyker units to do damage, and I really missed having a reactive move, so I might consider swapping the Lone Op on my Desolation Marines for a reactive move on the Infiltrators. This will be all for today, Battle Brothers. Come and visit the Realm of Ultramar Discord and ask me whatever you want in person. Whatever you do, don't bring the Solar Spearhead against me. Courage and honor, we march for McCrack!